stand up all I go make them know. Bieber on the floor.
$50. You get a 5.2-inch 1080p display, a Kirin 950 octa-core CPU, 4 gigs of RAM, 32 or 64 gigs of expandable storage, and a 3000 mAh battery, all enclosed in a glass and metal body. The display is really good for what you pay for. Icons and text are sharp, colors are very vibrant, and it's a really solid performer in the sunlight. Throughout my usage, I've been able to get used to the smaller 5.2-inch size fairly well, and this case that I got for it at the event gives it that perfect feel in the hand, where I don't feel like I'm going to drop and break it. But even without it, it still has a very nice feel to it. And even though the metal wrapping around the sides is very iPhone-esque, I don't give it points off for that because it still looks and feels very premium. The back of the phone is a glass slab with 15 layers of different materials beneath it, and when you put a light directly over the back, you get this really cool effect. I don't know, I just thought I'd throw that in there. So while we're on the subject of the back, let's talk about that fingerprint scanner. This is definitely the most innovative fingerprint scanner I've used on a phone so far. The scanner itself is pretty fast, and I wouldn't say it's faster than my OnePlus 3, but it's pretty fast. I will say, however, that it's a tad bit more accurate overall, and that's probably because of the placement on the phone. So this scanner also doubles as a button, and you have a bunch of different functions you can enable for it. First of all, you have smart keys, which allows you to set specific actions for double pressing, pressing, and long pressing the button. I have mine set for flashlight, so pressing the button gives me the flashlight. For double pressing, I have the camera app set to open, and if I press and hold, Chrome will open up. You can also use the scanner for gestures, and one of them being swiping up and down to access the notification shade. This is a feature that I've been using a lot. You can also swipe left or right to go through your photos in the gallery, and so far from what I've seen, you can only do this while using the stock gallery app. It doesn't work for Google Photos or anything like that. So yeah, you can really tell that Honor is trying to innovate a lot in this department, and I know that third-party developers are going to have a lot of fun with this. Now, another thing about the Honor 8 I've really grown to like is the camera, or cameras I should say. It's got two 12 megapixel cameras on the back. One is an RGB lens used for capturing color data, and the other one is a monochrome lens used for capturing all the detail. The camera is pretty good overall, I'd say. Colors are pretty vibrant and accurate, and the photos come out fairly detailed. This phone also uses software to mimic a shallow depth of field in photos, and it looks pretty good. And by having those dual cameras, you can change focus points after a shot is taken in post. You have a ton of modes to choose from. You have manual photo and video modes, as well as HDR mode, time-lapse mode, and even a good food mode. So I guess if you want to truly capture how good your meal is, then this phone's got you covered. When it comes to video, you have up to 1080p 60fps recording, and I don't know why they couldn't just throw in 4K video, but it's not that big of a deal breaker. The video is just okay. The footage is pretty shaky, and there isn't that much detail. I still think the 6P is my favorite camera overall. It's just such an excellent camera, but this is a pretty decent performer. There's also an 8 megapixel shooter on the front, and it's pretty good for selfies, and its most standout feature is the beauty mode. Now, I'm not going to show you what it did for me, but here's the outcome of using max beauty mode on the Honor 8 for some other people. So, yeah. So Huawei has a custom skin on top of Android 6.0 called EMUI. Like I said in my first impressions video, I really don't like the way the UI looks overall, but it's got a handful of useful features. You'll find most of the features in the Smart Assistant settings. There's a bunch of stuff for motion control actions, so you can like flip the phone to mute it and stuff like that. You also have this mode called Mini Screen View, where you basically use a smaller portion of the display for better one-handed usability. You also have some voice control settings, so you can use voice commands to wake the phone and answer phone calls. You also have a scheduled powered on and off setting, as well as a mode for wearing gloves. So yeah, this software is kind of one of those looks bad but performs well situations. So onto the battery life, it's okay. I usually pull about 3 hours of screen on time, and it seems like apps like Hangouts drain the battery a lot more than it does on my other phones like the OnePlus 3 and 6P. It's got a 3000 mAh battery, so I don't get how it could be performing like this with a 1080p display, and I've seen other users almost pulling 6 hours of screen on time, but I'm thinking that the software just doesn't optimize these third-party apps for the battery that well by default. One of my biggest gripes with this phone is the speakers. There's only one single driver on the bottom of the phone, and not only does it not get that loud, but it distorts a ton at high volumes, and it just overall doesn't sound that good at all. I honestly don't get why they didn't just put them in the front of the display.